Shalom. We are in Parashah Lech Lecha, and we are starting the journey studying Abraham's life. Now, just as an introduction, the first 11 chapters in the Torah explains creation, the fall of man, judgment, the salvation, the 8 souls, and then the Tower of Babel. Very interesting time frame if you look at it and you zoom out, and you see that as a fractal of the larger picture. Where we have a cycle, we've got creation. We're also in a situation where we are in a system called Babylon, right at the end, and continuing our cycle from we are in this time and space. We are moving into the time of Abraham. Now, Abraham is the first Hebrew, the first Ivri, the first one who crossed over. And that is the way to get out of Babylon. And that's what Lech Lecha actually means. It's to get out, move out, and go. Leave your house, leave your household, leave the system, and be part of Yahweh's household. And then he traveled to Egypt because of a famine. Now, Egypt is a place of sin and bondage. And then he left Egypt and he wandered through the wilderness, and Yahweh directed his every step. Now, that wilderness experience is also associated with our third letter of the alphabet that we are going to look at this week, which is the letter Gimel. That can also be pronounced Gamal, which means camel. Now, a camel is designed to withstand harsh conditions, specifically to travel through a wilderness. Now, we are about to enter a wilderness experience called the Great Tribulation. And this Gimel, this Gamal, is the vehicle or the means that we will be able to travel safely through this wilderness. And if you overlay that with the concept of Ivri, becoming Hebrew, that is to come out of her, my people. That's the calling out of the people of Mashiach, because in Avraham was the seed of Mashiach, and through him the Messiah came into being, into the physical. So all of that still coincides and fits the pattern within our time frame, within our storyline, but within a new cycle or a new perspective overlaid with where we are at. The other thing about Gimel, it's the letter 3. Number 3 means covenant. And we also see the covenant cut with Abraham, where Yahweh placed him in a deep sleep, or in a time or period or space of darkness, the lower parts of this realm, in order to separate something. Now, that's also something we see from Mashiach. He went into the deepest, darkest parts of this lower realm, which is Sheol, which is another meaning of Choshek, which is the waters of the deep, that entraps the souls. That's part of the separation process, in order to get the souls out that are entrapped in bondage under the waters of the deep, within the lower parts of Eretz, the kingdom of the physical. And that's also seen in a fractal within the storyline of Abraham and the covenant being cut with him. Now, what's also fascinating is that the deep sleep is also connected to Adam's deep sleep and also Yeshua's deep sleep. And those three are, the first one is the problem, the next one is the solution that is prophetic, and then you get the solution that is the real, which is the death and resurrection of Mashiach, where he did the work, that final release and separation of those in bondage. We also see that in his work, where he said, I came to set the captives free. Which captives? The captives under the waters of the deep, that is bound within the realm of Eretz, the two kingdoms we looked at last week, Eretz and Shamayim. Now this week we're going to see the promise made to Avraham, which he said, your generation will be like the stars in heaven and won't be able to be counted. And then in another chapter later on, he repeats that and said, your generation will be like the stars, but also the sand of the sea. Now the sea relates to the nations. The sand relates to Eretz of Adamah, or Adamah, which means ground, which is the place of the second kingdom, the lower kingdom. When Yahweh created in the beginning, Bereshit, Yahweh created Shamayim and Eretz. Shamayim is the heavens where the stars are. That's the promise of Abraham's generation, which will be the elevated ones. And then you get the other kingdom of the earth, Eretz, which is the sand of the sea, where the entrapped ones are. Now, what we discussed previously through the cycles of creation, we highlighted that separation is part of judgment, but separation also part of creation. And the one is the end and the other one is the beginning. The Aleph Tav of judgment and creation is the commonality of separation. And that's where we see the cycles connecting. The cycles of those who are not elevated to Shamayim will still be entrapped within Eretz. And the next cycle, there will be a process where people will be allowed to become Ivri through the covenant, and then be elevated from the kingdom of Eretz that is bound under the waters of darkness to be elevated to Shamayim, the kingdom of Echad. So I just want to share that with you. I hope that was insightful, and I'll leave you with these few thoughts. I hope you have a lovely day. Shalom.